To me, it's an honor, really, to be here and being a conference for the Global South is something special because I come from Chile. You can see there my affiliations. I work in Belgium, in Chile, and also I have a foundation. I will go fast, so to not lose time, but I want to really tell you that there is a strong emotion to be part of something like this in a place like this at this time of the history of mankind. So it's a very meaningful thing to me. So, okay, because the conference is about the Global South, and we know there are some conflicts or long-standing differences between the Global South and the Global North. Indeed, we are called different globals, just to start. So this is the typical, prototypical view of inequality where the Global North kind of takes the resources and then creates some sort of happy world in the up, whereas the people in the South are suffering and so on. So that's a prototypical view, which I propose that we have to see with more nuanced eyes in order to think of something like the Noosphere, something more, more, let's say, cooperative or unitary. So geographically speaking, the relationship, it's more like a fractal. So there are patches of wealth and poverty everywhere, both in the global south and north. Actually, here we are in a patch of richness that goes much better than I have in Brussels. So yeah, that's a sort of fractal. Second, this is not just about money. It's not just about wealth. It's also about a sense of belonging and happiness. And in parts of the global north, we have higher rates of suicide than in parts of the global south, and people seem to be more happy and more relaxed and chilling and so on in the south. So this is not just about money. And also politically speaking, we see opposite trend forces. Like you can see lots of new trade cooperation agreements and so on. Like there is some sort of cooperation coming, but also there are domination practices in, for example, in the mining industry, and destabilization of many regions that are imposed by powerful countries from the north. So this is not just like one and another, two different things. It's a much more complex game. So this similar nuanced analysis can be made to many other problems, not just to inequality between the globals, but also to sustainability, war, migrations. Any kind of wicked problem you take for the world is going to be more nuanced than just like, oh, this is the picture. So this is just a careful revision, and this is the message of my talk. We must develop knowledge in a new way so we can build noospheric cooperation that can lead us to make a meta-system transition where these weak problems will seem primitive from this new perspective. This is what I want to get. I hope I have enough time. So let's think now about embracing complexity and interdisciplinarity, which I mentioned here in this slide. If I go back, yeah, we have to embrace complexity and interdisciplinarity first as something that, in order to understand these problems, we need to start thinking in terms of complexity and interdisciplinarity, just to start, because this other typical one true form of looking at things is generally too simple. So let's look now how this is coming. The knowledge actually is not yet, or well, it's just getting complex and interdisciplinary now. And this picture, maybe I don't know if you see it, but it shows like the educational trajectory of the Western civilization. So we start with the Greeks and how, what were the things that were taught back in the day, rhetorics, music, geometry, poetry, and then with the Greeks you get like law became very important, medicine became important, and now in the traditional or current form of universities, we have these faculties, departments, and knowledge has been somehow organized by this structure where you have leaders of departments that have, or faculties that put together some areas which share methodologies, and then these different methodologies that are shared by the faculty are divided in departments, and then you have heads of departments and so on, and knowledge is given to the next generation according to this structure. But this structure has always played a role that has helped to sustain the current practices of the society. Call them like, they could be colonizatory or dominative, or imposing or trying to foster consumism, or trying to foster whatever it's tried by the powers of the society to be sustained and maintained, will be reflected by the way in which the knowledge is organized and given to the next generations. That's the message I want to give. And this has to make us think a little bit about how knowledge is given. So this is the typical view of disciplines. But now if we want to put the sustainable development goals, which are like the characterization of the wicked problems of the world that we have to face now, they don't fit actually in any faculty. You take no hunger, no poverty. Where do you fit that? In social science, in political science, in education, in medicine? Where does it lie? It doesn't lie in any of them and in all of them at the same time. So the actual structure in which knowledge is given to the new generations does not fit the challenges that the world has to face today. That's the message. It's very simple. You put them all, no one fits in any of them, so that will tell you, okay, things are complex, we need interdisciplinary cooperation. And if we take a problem now, let's just go easy with, like, the world is a problem, we need to solve the problem of the world. What do we have? Industry, we have cities, we have economic system, everything is intertwined. And it's just not just simply intertwined one thing with the other, but collectives are intertwined with other collectives. So it's not even like one-to-one, it's not even a graph, it's more complex than that. And actually we have to introduce other fields, so one will be industry or urban science, economics, but also biodiversity, well-being, politics. And the idea is to try to find some sort of encompassing view, and that view is given by complex systems. I'm not going to elaborate on that because that will be one talk on its own, but the main 4 features of a complex system are contextuality, meaning that interactions are not so linear and simple. Then feedback, meaning that the interactions that things have with each other will impact their future interactions. That leads to self-organization, meaning that the collective, the parts interacting in this system, through their feedbacks given by contextual interaction, will create some stable behavior, some stable regimes that in many cases lead to look at this stable behavior as an emergent feature. So something, a collective formed out of the feedbacks of the parts. So we must reflect critically on why structures of knowledge are positioned the way they are today, and why this is preventing complex and interdisciplinary approaches to flourish. Well, there are initiatives like this one, other IAS in general in the world have been trying to put this role in the Centre Leo Apostel at the Free University of Brussels. We also have that, and my NGO also tries to do that. So there are efforts, but this is not the mainstream. So I think we need to think of how can we get to put this type of thinking to the mainstream and change education somehow. And there is another major problem with knowledge, which is like this organization of theoretical knowledge, the way in which society and educational structures have put theory as the most respectable form of knowledge. So if we make an easy distinction, we got 3 types of knowledge. One is theoretical knowledge, the one you can put in a book. I give you the book, that there is the knowledge. I can give to you, I can put it in symbols and pass it through. But the practice, learning to dance, learning to ride a bike, is not in a book. You need to embody this knowledge. It can be put in a book. You can read all the books about how to dance and go dance. You won't dance well unless you practice a lot. And there is another type of knowledge which is not even given by practice, it's just experience. So your best friend or like your relationship with your family is not given by a practice, it's given by something less structured than a practice, that is like a collective of multiple contextual experiences, and that's what makes to know, for example, deeply someone you love. You can have a script to know someone deeply and love it. You need to live with the person, and that's it. So this, if you look at this, universities and knowledge structures, hierarchies in general, put theory first, then practice, and then experience goes the last. Of course, the educational trajectory and the curricula gives importance to experience and practice, but that will not give you a degree. You need to have theory first. So there is a sort of hierarchy going on, and there is another division of knowledge, which I find interesting, which is passive and active and creative. Passive is, I know something, and I do not change that something I'm knowing. Like I look at the stars won't change because I look at them. But if you want to know, for example, something like the taste of a cookie, you need to change the cookie to know its flavor. You need to actually eat it. You need to interact with the cookie in a way that it's going to change. And giving another more clear example, if you go to try to understand a community, a small community of 10 people, you will be one of them. So they will change. It won't be that community. With you inside, it's another community. And there is a third type of knowledge, which is the creative knowledge. It's before you created it, it wasn't there. So that poem, that artistic creation that you do is created by you. It's not something and now you know it because you created it. So these are like a division, like if you look at the knowledge as a space, then you get this three-dimensional division, theoretical, practical, and experiential, in terms of certain variables, and then you get the passive and active and creative. So if you do an analysis of this, which I did, you can classify knowledge by these concepts of can it be measured, can it be transferred, can it be repeated, and whether or not is it contextual. And that gives a sort of reclassification of knowledge that different practices, different knowledge, like different fields of knowledge in the traditional academia actually fall in different parts of this. Of course, there's a distribution. Some parts, for example, mathematics is much more theoretical passive. You only learn truths that are there, whereas, for example, social psychology, which is a lot about interacting with people, will go more into the practical, active, and arts will be more experiential, creative, and so on, but everything requires a little bit of theory. So I look at I'm trying to propose a more integrative form view of knowledge as given by theory, practice, experience, and also a transformation of your own reality by the act of learning. So, and this is changing totally the structure of academia I was showing before, and it looks like this in the other case. So that's what I wanted to propose. So now, to finish, one more. How to build noospheric cooperation, given that we have those questionings about education and about complexity and interdisciplinarity, I propose that we should learn from examples of cooperation in nature. So some lessons, and very general, the fact that we are a multi-level being, it's me, my body, or you, your body, but then you have your skin, which is another, somehow living being that is made of cells, which are also living beings. So and we are all cooperating at our all scales, so we can sustain at the different levels as something alive. So this invites us to consider the other, whether inside me or outside me, as part of ourself in a given way. We are all kind of interconnected by the living processes we are part of at different scales. This allows to establish novel enablers and constraints. So that's how societies form. That's how, complex systems self-organize, basically. So this will invite you to think that the expected utility can have a different time scale than your own perception. So if we expect our utilities to come at a larger time scale because we might be working for the higher being that is going to allow us to have a more sustainable life, then we might change our idea of like invest today, get the return tomorrow, which is dominant, of course, today. And cooperation is much better than competition under the right circumstances. So how to build those circumstances? Those are the lessons. Now, the challenges and opportunities for the noospheric cooperation between the globals, given this, what I said before. So we got all the information today. This is the technological thing. Now we can communicate with any point in the world and so on. But the problem is that all this information is very scattered, so we can communicate with each other. But if you want to know something that someone said, whether someone has said something, you need to find that information, and it's not easy we can get lost in the ocean and information. And also the problem is that this, as we discussed before with other people, this is owned. Most of the information now is owned by corporations, so it's not free. So we have to think that information is a little bit not so free. We got a lot of information, but we need to find a way to get it. So it's an opportunity and challenge. Institutions like the Noosphere, the Human Energy, this UM6P, and any other institution had priorities and funding schemes. So we can actually try to cooperate, looking at your opportunities, your priorities, your funding schemes, and how to cooperate, but that changes all the time. So it's difficult to keep up with, with all these political changes, now Trump and, like everything. There is always something happening that changes the priorities and funding schemes. So even we have the cooperation opportunities, it's not so easy. Another good thing is that people cooperate all the time, but then as we are here, bubbles are formed. So it's very hard to become part of a bubble that is well formed for a long time. So you are an outsider, who are you, and this and that. So we prefer to cooperate with those we know, but there are actually many bubbles like the Human Energy project that are looking for a transition, that have this idea, but they don't interact with each other. I know a few of them, and I always tell, look, you should know these other guys and so on, but who am I to make all these connections? So we need to, I mean, what I think is that these bubbles should be aware that there are other bubbles and try to put some catalyst role or someone that will help to make this. And if you do achievements in your life, these are sources of positive feedback, but in many cases, by the time that the recognition gets to a person, it's generally too late. It can get at a very advanced stage of your life when you got enough recognition so you can tell things to the world, but then you are like, you don't have the same energy you used to have and so on. So there is a little bit of chain, of building a chain, so the people with recognition will pass it on to the other people, and the power structure that this person holds can be passed to the other somehow, so bubbles can start connecting and so on. I guess you see the meaning of what I'm saying. So I will tell my personal journey very quickly. I started working in the desert of Atacama, where what you were mentioning. So I used to work there in solar power in a very small scale, and I had the luck to get a scholarship to go to Germany to learn how to install and work with solar energy, understood the business and so on, and get my diploma, and then started cooperating, managed to do some business and brought solar panels to the desert to work with the indigenous communities. And we actually created this after a few years. You can see like that white guy is a politician, and the other people are like from the community. So we managed to create the link between the government and the community through this project. So, and that's the moment where I was telling him, look, you should, what I'm saying now, I was telling back then to him. So this is another example. Then I made my studies, I traveled, I gave talks in many places in Europe, in Paris, in Germany, Max Planck and CLEA. And then I went back to Chile and started doing the same at a small institution and giving seminars and bringing my prestige of having done stuff in Europe, starting teaching people there, giving diplomas myself to others, then bringing important people because I already had connections like Bob Suter from IBM Quantum Computing, and bringing stars from the old times in Chile like Raúl Espejo, who is a famous cybernetician, and I was even interviewing Maturana. I got the stage to do these things because I was doing all that, and that's a nice picture with Maturana. Who knows Humberto Maturana? And that led me back to be able to start working with my own country, with the Superior Audit Court, and went to connect with Superior Audit Courts in other parts of the global north. So that's the Dutch Superior Audit Court, that's the US, the GAO in Washington. I met with these guys and tried to help how to do better audit for the country, because corruption, because bad people spending bad money. And that led me to create my own NGO, which is the Dicta Foundation, and we do projects with social impact. With the little money we can get, we help. Like this is a guy that is in a very social risk. His parents are in jail and blah, blah, blah. And he liked music, so we gave him the chance to really record music and have the experience, not the theory, but the experience of being a musician for 1 week in a recording studio, and see if the guy will a little bit love his life a little more and try to become a musician rather than a delinquent or something like that. These are dialogues between scientists and artists in Spotify. This is a series of talks about sustainability to students of schools that don't have funding. And this is more like making workshops with scientists from the global north to later on make a book with Springer that will help to connect the professors in Chile and in many other parts in the world. And that led me to work with Francis, finally, in this project given by the Templeton Grant, that led us to connect with David Sloan Wilson, with the Noosphere, and so on. Then I went to Japan, artificial life. I meet Anil Seth, famous scientist. So now I'm in this stage where I meet famous scientists, or not so famous, but with powerful somehow, and rock stars of science of different places. And I create my own group in Belgium. And then I was invited by the Filipino, Global South again, to give my talks about mathematical biology, which is the stuff I do. So they saw me and they thought, oh, now Thomas is someone important. We should invite him as a keynote. And now I'm speaking here. So you can actually build up, but you need to jump from, what I did was to jump from the Global South to the Global North, back and forth, and always trying to create this. And this is the model of university cooperation that I have for a future for the globals. Out of all this stuff I did, you need to imagine that you have two institutions, let's say two universities, and there are, in the bottom part, you have informal collaboration, which is what I did most of the time because I didn't have the credentials to do formal collaboration. So we apply to a grant, we supervise informally, or we do teaching in one course or the other course, or we try to do research together. But then if you can put it in the university framework through an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, or General Agreement, or something like that, you can actually connect with the international office, with the academic research and development department, research and development or technology departments, and they can help you to connect with the scholars, and you can improve that cooperation through the academic, the university apparatus. That's very difficult to do, but it is possible. As I was telling before, this is not so easy because you need all these challenges and opportunities. Information is somewhere, you know. Everyone tells, okay, there is a development plan for the university and there is an implementation plan. But you try to find that. Try to understand all the acronyms on those plans. You start reading, I don't want to cooperate anymore. It's too hard. You need support. So I did some labs. I created my own research group within CLEA, and so far we have 5+ international PhD students. I'm building formal cooperations with the Philippines and also with my home country in Chile, always creating these agreements and trying to apply for grants and so on. So it works, but it takes a lot of time. And I'm also being a consultant for cooperation technologies using AI, and that's the more nuanced model that we are building now, a platform to discover, to mine cooperation between universities. You can download the development plans of two universities, and then you can find potential cooperations across their professors or their groups that you might find compatibilities that they don't know are necessary for both of them to do cooperation. So I believe personally, and this is like that I believe that we have the conceptual depth through complex systems and interdisciplinarity, and also the data to make scientific and professional the concept of cooperation. It's not anymore like a thing, okay, we are just good people. No, it can be made scientific and professional, and it's needed by the world. So at least by the Global South, but with the nuances of fractal structures. And we need to start the experimental phase at a larger scale. And I think that the Noosphere, Human Energy, these are fundamental stakeholders for giving credibility in the world to all these changes and to support the platforms that can lead to make this something scientific. So I think we should be informing maybe in a few months or years the OECD on how they should change, the funding structures or what they expect from universities to be the form they educate people, other policymakers. So this is the challenge, and this is where I end, I think. Yes, thank you.